So calling to order the September 11th, 2024 meeting of the Stoughton Elementary School Building Committee. This meeting is being recorded. It's being held in accordance with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to amending certain COVID-19 measures adapted during the state of emergency. Section 20 is amended March 29th, 2023, and number of times prior to that by Governor Healy. This latest amendment signed into the supplemental budget bill, which among other things extends the temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law until March 31st, 2025. Again, this meeting is being recorded. I'm going to call the roll. If you hear your name, you could loudly identify yourself as being here. Joe Buckley, I know I saw you.
Here.
Fran Brutinitti. Fran's for Tom Coulter, who I didn't see here also, but Tom Coulter. Stephen Cavey. Diane Dolan.
Here.
Jake Dorr. Jake is here, but stepped away for the moment. Sandra Gropey.
Present.
Oh, Sandra, you're here. Great.
Yep.
Joyce Husseini.
Here.
Katie Monahan.
Here.
Catherine Weiss.
Here.
Dr. Baeta.
Present.
TJ Recupero is here. Melissa Lynch.
Here.
I saw. Eileen Sprague. I'm going to skip to Eileen at the end. Heidi Perkins.
Here.
And that's the full committee. I will note that that Eileen Sprague did send out an email today that she is withdrawing from the committee with her regrets. And so we had 14 members, now we have 13. And that's an agenda item you'll note on your agenda item 4, if I'm right, 5, excuse me. So first item up, acceptance of the minutes of June 20th, 2024 and July 7th, 2024. I'm going to handle both together unless anybody has any objections.
Yeah, TJ, no objection from me. I just want to add, we should accept them with the change that I need to fix the Joyce note. Joyce, I think I marked in those minutes that she had already switched with Dennis, which is not yet the case. So,
okay. Great. Any comments, questions, changes to the minutes of June 20th and July 7th? July 17th, right?
Oh, okay. I was just about to say that to you, TJ. It says July 17th.
Yeah, I thought it was July 17th. The agenda says the 7th, but it was the 17th.
It is the 17th.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just as a comment that Joyce Hosseini has retired and she's looking like she's really enjoying retirement.
If there's no changes or comments, is there a motion to approve the minutes of June 20th and July 17th? Anyone can make them.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of July 17th. And what was the other date?
June 20th and July 17th.
Sorry, June 20th and July 17th.
Motion made by Heidi Perkins. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. With that change, Heidi, if it's a friendly amendment, that Joyce, who's identified as a non-voting member, that be changed to a voting member in those minutes.
Also, I don't believe I was present at the July meeting, even though it kind of lists me under present, I guess.
Great, and Joyce's presence on July 17th. Right, with those amendments, all in favor, say I'll call the roll, actually. Joe Buckley.
Aye.
Steve Cavey. Diane Dolan.
I'm going to abstain, TJ. I was not there on the 17th of July.
You know what? Heidi, can I amend your motion again? Can I handle these separately?
Fine with me, so I'll.
There
Sorry.
any objection?
Nope.
Will somebody second that just so we can be official?
Second for the
Second.
record.
All right, great. So this is a motion to approve June 20th. Joe Buckley.
Aye.
Steve Cavey is not here yet. Diane Dolan,
Aye.
Jake Dorr is still gone. Sandra Gropey,
Aye.
Joyce Husseini,
Aye.
Katie Monahan,
Aye.
Catherine Weiss,
Aye.
Dr. Baeta,
Aye.
TJ Recupero votes aye. Melissa Lynch,
Aye.
Eileen strike that. Heidi Perkins,
Abstain.
Heidi Perkins abstains. Great. That's a vote. And a motion for July 17th, Heidi. Can I have a second on that also? From someone?
Second.
Great. Any other changes? If not, I'm going to vote that separately again. Joe Buckley,
Aye.
Steve Cavey still not here. Diane Dolan,
Abstain.
abstain. Jake Dorr. Sandra Gropey,
Aye.
Joyce Husseini,
Abstain.
abstain. Katie Monahan,
Aye.
Catherine Weiss,
Aye.
Dr. Baeta,
Aye.
Melissa Lynch,
Aye.
Heidi Perkins,
Aye.
and I don't think I said myself. TJ Recupero votes aye. So
Mr. Chairman, the first vote was 901. Second vote was 802.
Majority in both cases.
Correct.
Thank you, Joe.
Just a quick question. Who was our second on that last one?
Ms. Gropey was.
Who was that?
Sandra Gropey.
Oh,
was
Sandra.
the second.
Thank you.
Heidi was first on both.
And I had 2 abstain on that last one. Was that Joyce
Correct.
and
8.
Diane?
Correct. 802.
And what about Jake? Is he abstain on both?
No vote right now. He's not on.
He's
No
not
vote.
present right now. All right, item 3 on the agenda. Oh, excuse me. So if there's no objection, why don't and I meant to do this earlier before we got into acceptance of the minutes. If I could open it up now to public comments, so we can do that at the beginning rather than push it off till the end. Unless there's any objection. Hearing none, great. So this is a point in the meeting that we open the meeting up to public comment. This will be monitored by Eric Rubin, who will allow people a maximum of 2 minutes to address the committee. Nothing we can exchange thoughts, comments, or certainly a vote on tonight, but we will take your comments into consideration for future meetings and future agenda items for sure. If you have a comment, wish to address the building committee, there is at the top of your screen a little hand that says raise under it. You can click that. Eric will recognize it and will recognize you to speak when the time comes. And we'll try to keep this as orderly as possible. If anybody has a question, please speak up, or a comment, please speak up now. All right, hearing none. Last chance, if anybody has a comment, wishes to address the committee during public comments. Three, two, one. Okay. We'll move on to item 3, invoice approval. We have 1 invoice, unless I'm wrong about that, in your vendor invoice package. That's Vertex Vertex invoice of July 31st, 2024 for $1,915.50. Did I miss anything, Eric, Tim? Great. Any questions for Vertex or otherwise, or comments that you wish to make? And if not, and if you look in your invoice package, by the way, you can see where we're at on spending for the appropriation for feasibility study, but if anybody has any comments, if not, is there a motion to approve the Vertex invoice for 1,500? I just flipped past that page. $1,900, excuse me, $15.50. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chairman,
Hello.
Byetta.
Second by Melissa.
Great. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll call for a vote. Again, by roll call vote, Joe Buckley.
Aye.
Steve Cavey. Diane Dolan.
Aye.
Jake Dorr. Sandra Gropey.
Aye.
Joyce Husseini.
Aye.
Katie Monahan.
Aye.
Catherine Weiss.
Aye.
Dr. Byetta.
Aye.
TJ Recupero votes aye. Melissa Lynch.
Aye.
And Heidi Perkins.
Aye.
Mr.
Great.
Chairman, 10-0-0.
Great. So we need to get an approval sheet circulated by email for that.
I will send it to, should I send it to Dennis?
Dennis or Fran? Fran might handle those too. I forget who.
You can
Used
send
to
it
be
to me.
Joyce.
Okay.
Who
Yeah,
was
you
that?
can send it to me. I'll take care of it. It's
Great.
Dennis.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, my screen didn't show everyone. Get that over.
No worries. Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it. All right. Item 4, MSBA update. Tim, do you want to? Your mic's off.
Good evening, everybody. My mic's off because my dog is barking, so I apologize for that. So as you know, we applied to the MSBA to have the deadline for getting the project approved per the MSBA regulations extended. We met with them and talked this through in more detail on a in-person basis or in Zoom basis. And we explained certain provisions of what the town's trying to do around, reinvigorating the project come the town meeting in November, but with the idea that we would actually put it to a vote consistent with the April election period. And so they have agreed, we received information that they've agreed to allow for the extension of the funding deadline, which would have expired in September, I believe, to April 3rd, I believe is the date we have now to extend the vote process. So currently, the idea, and we've updated the schedule to show that, is that we would get a successful vote on the 3rd and basically essentially push the project, in terms of the schedule that further, about a year plus or minus. So that's where we stand right now. And I think, this meeting will discuss some of the other developments around that.
So Tim, if I'm correct, because we discussed this back in June, that the length of time for this extension, you would characterize that as extraordinary? My words.
Well, I don't think I would not count on getting another one. Let's put it that way. But I think that it's, normally they don't extend this long, but you know, I can't really comment, TJ, because I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
all the districts, but and in our experience, we hadn't dealt with that before, but I think they kind of have implied basically that this will be our one crack at the apple, or our last crack at the apple.
Yeah, I kind of took that from their letter.
Yeah.
That was I mean, it wasn't the friendliest of extensions I could envision when they sent it, but anybody have any comments, questions, or otherwise?
TJ, Joe, so I did take the time to review as MSBA situations that local votes have been not successful, and the calendar of this extension is extraordinary, to use your word. You can't find others in at least the short period of time I used 2019 to the present, and went back, and what you see is constantly folks going back to the MSBA and withdrawing their proposal. So I do think that this is a very special circumstance that we're in right now, and publicly I'd like to thank the MSBA for providing us that opportunity.
I agree with that. I did the same research, Joe. The only one I found somewhat comparable was Carver. And
Correct.
they actually made Carver jump through some hoops before they extended.
Correct.
But anybody else have comments, questions? So,
Ms.
I
Gropey
I
has
had my hand.
Meg-
I
oh
have
yeah,
my hand raised.
Sandra, I'm sorry.
That's
I didn't
okay.
see-
I don't even, I figured out how to raise it again, but I gotta figure out how to unraise it after this.
Yeah.
I
please
did
go ahead.
want to just kind of make a remark if I could. I wanted to thank the MSBA as a citizen of the town, taxpayer, parent, previous school committee member. This has been a very long journey, many years in the making. And I appreciate that they're willing to do this long, unprecedented extension and try to help support the youth of the town to get this new elementary school. I also just want to thank you, TJ, as the chair, and all the time that you've put in to put documentation together and try to make this happen. And Dr. Baeta, as well yourself, because this is a lot of work in the background. And, there's a lot of discussions that have to be had behind the scenes. So I just wanted to kind of show my appreciation to not only the MSBA, but you guys as well. Thank you for all the work to get this done.
Thank you, Sandra. Does anybody else have any comment? I did have one other thing to say, and maybe this will prompt someone else to say something. We are going to get into what we'll do during this extension period, but I mean, for my own part, we discussed both offline and in the meetings, what will we do after the failed vote? And Tim, I think you and I, probably at the day after the vote, we sort of chisholmed or workshopped what the timeline would be if we had to withdraw the SOI and reapply, money aside. And I think so they'd have, and correct me if I get this wrong, but of course their deadline for filing a new SOI would be next April. And in this case, we have an April vote. So if there's a failed vote, consider it this way: we won't make that April deadline, I wouldn't suspect. And even if we did, I don't think that we'd be accepted right in. So the soonest we would be accepted right in would be 2026. And then a year to put, or most of a year to put everything in place and get a feasibility study and a project team together.
Well, actually, it's a year to do the preliminary work to get to that point, pretty
Right.
much. And
And
somewhat,
another
it's somewhat
year
dependent on this, on their scheduling of how they want the projects to flow.
So that brings us to the end of 2026. Let's call that early spring 2026. And then another year in feasibility study. So now we're into 2027. We'd have a town meeting vote. Of course, we need an appropriation for feasibility study in that. For
So
another
and
feasibility.
just to clarify, so the 2026, if you file the statement of interest, you have a year to do all that appropriation, establish a building
Right.
committee, then if you slot in properly within the, where they want to slot you in, they would then say you are accepted in the feasibility, you can hire an OPM, an architect, and then, so essentially that actually starts probably realistically in 27. The start of the feasibility study. And then it's a year plus or minus for a feasibility study. And so you're talking 28. So that's why we've always come up with depending on whether you get accepted. As I said, I mean, we've known many districts and they probably would would want to see that there is going to be a successful project. But we've always used a range that's somewhere around, 5 to 8 years, something depending on whether you get accepted.
So we're looking 2 years to build. Once it is approved and the appropriation is made, so we're looking at soonest around 2032.
Yeah, I think that's for this purpose. Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to add
2032.
perspective. And that's why, I mean, for my own part, and I only speak for myself on this, that's why I thought that this extension and sticking with this project, which we know meets with MSBA approval, because of course they approved it. We've been through the facilities subcommittee and we've gotten all their comments and incorporated all those. And we know that we meet their guidelines and that we've maxed out our reimbursement for this. So that's why I thought that it was important for my part to stick with this, and why I'm grateful that MSBA extended us so long. That's the end of my comments. So does anybody else have anything else to add on the issue of this extension?
Yeah, I can add a little bit. Depending upon how many revisions need to be made to the documents, the MSBA may accept a great deal of what's been submitted so far as a feasibility study, so that doesn't have to be redone if it's still applicable, with a new scope. I mean, if there's significant changes and redesigns, they won't accept it, but they may accept quite a bit of what's already been done. Their biggest issue, I think, is going to be local approval, local support. And that's going to be the same even when even if we don't get a successful vote, we reapply. I don't know if it's in their official guidelines, but they will take into consideration, at least in the back of their minds, how this project didn't have local support. And they're going to want to see some assurances that there's some local support for this project. Otherwise, they're not going to waste their time with us again. They have other, we're one of a dozen that get in 23, and there was probably at least 50 or 60 applications. So,
Right.
And anything that gets spent during feasibility next time is totally on the town.
And for those of you who are listening and don't know, Joe worked with the MSBA for, I won't say how many, 15?
15.
15 years. So, thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. And Joe Baye, did you have your hand?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's appropriate in this MSBA update, because there's really not another opportunity unless we do other business, to talk about the monkey of the room of the South School Working Group Committee. I've attended one meeting, of which I was happy to do so. I've been asked to attend another meeting next week. I would hope maybe some members of this committee would like to attend. It's literally a regurgitation of every single piece of information that's on our website. which I'm not against whatever process people want to work. But my concern is how is this working group seen as part of this MSBA process? The MSBA is very clear in its guidelines on a building committee.
Mhm.
I think there was a attempt to put a balanced group into that committee. There was a formal move by others to make sure that that group wasn't balanced, if you will, between quote, yes voters and no voters. But my concern and the reason why I reached out to the committee to request a meeting and get back on it is because this group is the governing body of this project.
Agreed.
And I want to be fair to a process that's being asked, but I want to know what the role of the building committee is as of today. We have an assurance from MSBA that is unsubstantiated in the past history of most of its projects. I think I can say it that way. Extraordinary, I think, is the word TJ you used. And yet, I kind of feel as a building committee and as the superintendent that I'm in limbo. That this working group is going to get something to, it's going to release a public document. The public document that I'm presenting to that working group this past Monday and this coming Monday is literally going to the webpage and just going through page by page by page by page by page of agendas, minutes, and reports that DRA and Vertex provided to us. They're there. So that speaks to the process that the triangulation of what's supposed to happen from a building committee to school committee, select board, other boards, and then town meeting was probably one of the problems with our situation, the reason why we didn't get a successful vote beyond a lot of other things. And so I'm not looking to not have the working group do what they're doing. That's beyond my scope of my responsibility. But I am looking to see what is the current role of the South Elementary School Building Committee as of today and moving forward.
I can address I can address all of that, but I don't want to cut off the discussion. So I do know about the town manager's independent working group, and that's the title of it. It's the Independent Elementary School Working Group, whatever it is. And I was appointed to it. I was asked to be on it, and I wasn't there last night, Joe, when you were there, but I will be next week. I had a work engagement last night. So I can tell you that the generation of it, the town manager received a number of, following the vote, received a number of questions from members of the community on the building project. And he compiled that list. It started with, I think, 11 questions or something. I saw a couple versions of it that he sent out for this working group. And then it eventually made it up to about 17. And I think after the first meeting of that working group, more were added. But the questions are, as you pointed out, I mean, they are all information that we've addressed before, but people in the community hadn't heard it. So the town manager's, the focus of the working group, I think, is noble. And I think it is intended to be quite productive to the project so that he would get a group of people in to look at, to ask these questions that were asked of him, provide the answers that we, the building committee, or whoever from the building committee gives to this working group so that they can write it up and they can say, why did you select this? Well, you can go through the documents, as you pointed out. We have a matrix on site selection. We have a matrix on these several options. And so the intention was for this working group to go through those and write up a report and say, this was answered, check. This was answered, check. This was answered, check. And then issue a report back and say that we did address everything. It certainly wasn't intended, I know, to infringe on anything that this building committee is charged with. Because as you pointed out, and I agree entirely, that we are the only authority that's under the MSBA regs that's authorized to issue recommendations on the school building project. So I was asked to be
Can
on
I
it.
just jump in? Can I
Sure.
just ask, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of information and I just want to make sure I have my head on straight with this. I don't really know anything about the working group, but
No, go ahead, Sandra.
so what I'm hearing is the town manager received a lot of questions after the vote. So he put together a working group to help him get answers, to answer people that asked him questions about the vote. That's separate and that has nothing to do or affiliated with the building committee.
Right,
It's not a subcommittee to the building committee
right.
or affiliated with it. It's for him to try to figure out how to answer questions that he received. That's what I'm hearing from you, which is fine, makes sense. That's great. My concern, I guess, is with the resources, you know? So meaning if we already have all this information out there, people can pull it, right? And that includes anybody that's getting a question. The second piece of that is, you know, with Dr. Baeda's time and also with anything that is coming out of that work, we don't know if any of those questions are questions that haven't been asked before in any public forums, right? Or answered. And, you know, I'm taking Dr. Baeda's word that a lot of all these questions are on the website. So I'm thinking that maybe the building committee, we need to, we are the governing body on this the building project. Maybe we need to just polish off that Q&A and see if that can get circulated from the building committee out to the public again. And maybe that will help with any confusion, with any open questions that people have. And then also, our building committee, is there a way for us to communicate with folks that if anybody's receiving questions outside of these sessions, that they direct them to the website?
I think there is. Your first suggestion, I think, was great. I can get the latest version of the questions. I think there were more added after the first version that I saw. So, and I can circulate those to the building committee and the project team so that we can provide answers. But
I just think the building committee maybe needs to publish, is what I'm saying, not so much provide answers just to other folks. It's published if Dr. Baeda already has those questions and he's saying that the answers were already out there. Maybe we can use the town resources to actually send out an email out to the full community with the Q&A and sharing that from the building committee.
Sure.
Not from anybody else. That's what I was suggesting. Not really any pre-work. I don't really want to see any lists from other people. I think Dr. Baeda got that. That would be my hope and suggestion so that we can get back on track as a building committee and continue to move forward, and the public's hearing from the building committee more often.
So and I see a couple of hands up, but I just want to add this part. So we do have a couple other agenda items. One in particular is public outreach. And that's mostly because what the MSBA did tell us specifically, and actually the town manager did tell this to his working group, is that MSBA's marching orders were that the project cannot change. So they're not suggesting changes to the project. They can't suggest changes to the project. But so our next, and you'll see on the agenda that public outreach is one of our main duties between now and the special election. But I think last word on this is that one of our big obstacles is, of course, going to be getting on another ballot for another debt exclusion vote. And I think this was intended to answer questions to the satisfaction of those who will vote to put us on another ballot. So I see two hands. I see Joyce and Joe. Joyce, how about you first?
Thank you, TJ. Kind of following along with what Sandra was talking about, this working group has basically been regurgitating all of the official documentation of the feasibility study and presentations made. Has it at all, the working group, addressed, or anybody addressed to them, the actual cost of a no vote And I know we touched on it in presentations. I don't know that it was ever formalized in any kind of documentation, but if you don't build this, how long will the South School last? What are our plans? What will it cost? It'll be all out of pocket. And I just
That's-
wanted to see how that was being responded to.
That's one of the questions that they're seeking an answer to.
Thanks.
Joe, you had your
Yeah,
hand
so
up.
I can, Joyce, that's a great question, and Sandra, thanks for bringing it up. So the working group questions that I received, I presented this past Monday, and I'm happy to share it with this committee, which pretty much was I verbalized each question and then attached all of the links to the documents from the website. I didn't feel that I needed to get into every single inch of detail, considering that it's been there and been done by this committee during my time on it and prior to my time. The issue that's come up is for the next group of questions that I received yesterday, which is 1.5 pages long of more questions, are questions that I can't really address. There are questions that are formulated under the guides of opinion, i.e., Line lumber is full of wetlands. I know it's full of wetlands. It's only wetlands. And so why are you trying to ask me to build a school on wetlands? I can't address that question. That question already comes in formulated with an opinion. So I'm not going to attempt to do so. What happens if you don't do anything? I went into at the last meeting, and we'll continue at this meeting, which is redistricting, modular classrooms, moving 300 students into 2 buildings, still having to do a design process, needing money for that, and then putting modulars that are either permanent or leased or whatever the situations may be, and an increase to operational costs. The important part for me in this discussion with the working group actually goes to our group, which is what is the future role, opportunity of us to continue to work with Vertex and DRA on options, because the money is gone. So this committee can't just say, oh, by the way, could you give us a plan for modular classrooms? Because that's not the purview of this committee. The purview of this committee is to build a brand new building with MSBA. That's how we've been appointed. My role now is, if no, then what? And I don't have the resources currently, besides making phone calls to modular companies, making phone calls to redistricting organizations that help with all of the, app geo application stuff that you need to do. Last night, I asked the committee to authorize me at the next meeting to create a redistricting committee. So I'm carrying, and this is going to be the negative. The negative is I'm going to be carrying or supporting and wanting a new building moving forward with a select board that needs to put it on the ballot, while at the same time asking for millions of dollars for feasibility, or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars for feasibility design, scope and design, if you will, for modulars, because you just don't go buy them and stick them in the parking lot. And added to that operational costs, and added to that, where are 300 kids from the South School going? Are they going to 2 schools? They going to 1? They can't go to 1. It's already hard to go to 2. Why? Kitchens, cafeterias, gymnasiums, parking lots, drop-off areas, playgrounds, and the list goes on and on and on. So I'm presenting these things to the working group, and happy to do so. But I'm doing so from a perspective that it's going to take quite a while in time to figure out what these costs are. I can't just go to Monday's meeting and say to the working group, it's $1.x million for this and two. I can't. I'd be lying to them. I'd be misinforming them. I can give them the cost of a renovation addition, and a new. you folks went through that before I was even here, and the numbers seem to add up. I would say that the numbers are already off because of labor costs and materials and all of that. But and again, I'm fine with the working group. That's the prerogative of the town manager, and that's okay with me. But my thing still becomes, I need to address the long-term issue of the South Elementary School. And I don't have much of a role to play except for building, quote, the Taj Mahal, as it's quoted by certain folks. People really believe that we can build a four-walled building for $25 or $30 million. Everybody on this committee that's been involved with anything to do with public buildings knows you can't, unless you're building it as solely a local South school. You could probably get into that $40 million range. And then the long-term planning of the district, supported by previous superintendents and numerous years of school committees, and this building committee, is we're trying to take off a building offline so we have less elementary schools, not more elementary schools to build. And I'll leave it at that because I'm just recanting everything that everybody on this committee already is aware of.
Thank you, Joe.
Anybody else on this topic? So Joe, much of what you said, you should have been at the first couple of these working group meetings, because I sat quietly. It's a town manager's group, and I was asked to be on it. And I think mostly I was asked to be on it so that I can point to people who can answer some of the questions. But as you sit in these meetings, and I wasn't there last night, so maybe you experienced some of this, the questions you got, I have to bite my tongue. I mean, it's a good group. I don't mean to suggest anything otherwise, but the questions that get asked are questions that we had answered. And we had 8 or 9 public forums that people just didn't go to. And it's kind of tough for me to sit there. I even told the town manager this. It's kind of tough for me to sit there and listen to the suggestion that we didn't provide this information, because we certainly did. And I think the town manager's goal with this is to get this information and disseminate it through this working group, who will vet these questions and ask these questions and vet these answers. And as I saw the list, one of the ones you'd mentioned, this wetlands, I didn't see that on the initial list. I'd be curious to see what that question is about, because that is a big question, but it is something that's static. Regardless of the size of the building, 17%, I think it is, of our total project cost is site work to get onto the site. But I don't want to overtalk. I see Diane's hand up. So Diane, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, TJ. I guess I'm a little concerned that we do have this working group as a South School Building Committee member. And I guess to you and to Dr. Baeta, what would be the outcome of this group? What are they looking to do? Because I'm not seeing that, or I'm not hearing that. Number one, they're going to have any, I hate to use the word input, but they're just not. It almost seems like it's just a group of people that are meeting to discuss things that we've already discussed at the building committee meetings.
Pretty much. They're asking questions, and they're going to put the answers to those questions in a report. I think the deadline that the town manager set was November 15th, and issue some sort of written document with the answers to those questions.
A report
Okay,
to what?
but-
A report
Yeah.
to who?
Yeah,
to
who's
what
getting the
end,
report?
I guess, the report.
I think I think it's to the select board. But
So
I'm
they
not
had all
sure.
the questions. I get it.
Well, they didn't have the questions. Town
Okay.
manager compiled the questions, but the select board is the appointing authority here. So I suspect so. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I guess I'm just gonna since I live in town, I'm a taxpayer and I'm the superintendent, I'm just gonna call a spade a spade. This is a rational group trying to put together information for why the select board should put it back on the ballot, pure and simple. Because they didn't have enough information prior, they didn't know it and have enough information. Anybody who wants to attack me on that, go right ahead.
I think
But
that's a
how
fair
it's-
characterization.
But that's the characterization. How can I have the data and information? So I, as a select board member, after being threatened as select board members, regardless of what you think of them, they have been threatened at every single meeting for the last 2 months by no voters for the sole purposes of saying, if you put this on the ballot, school committee members and select board members will have people up against them in the Springtown meeting. That's a quote from at least 3 of them in the last 2 months. And so
That's awful.
let's just call a spade a spade. At the end of the day, this is trying to find a rational way, agree with it or not, support it or not, to get the select board to feel comfortable enough to say, we had a working group. The balance was supposed to be yes voters and no voters. We all know that just like solving other political issues in this country, we have certain people who say, don't you dare get on that group. And that's what happened. That's a fact. I'll call it a spade. At the end of the day, I'm at 239 Chemung Street. Come on over. I'm sick and tired of the baloney. I'm sick and tired of the BS. And I'm really sick and tired that at the end of the day, a small group of people are controlling the outcome. And the democratic process does call for that if something doesn't go in the way that you think it should go, and you need to find a resolution, you go through the political process. That is the American way. It's not a no voter said no and we're done. That's not the way. It's you said no, but what's the solution? No voters have no solution. Period. End of story.
Joe Buckley, you had something to say too. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
cut you off.
That's okay. Diane actually asked this question that I was going to ask. I was wondering who this report, so-called report, is being addressed to, and then what is the town manager going to do with it when he gets it? I mean, is he going to submit it to this committee as recommendations? Is he going to, what's the process? There's, as the MSBA said, this project cannot change substantially. And the biggest issue I've seen with the no voters is the cost. And like Dr. Baeta says, they haven't even come up with an ounce of recommendations as to how to address the issue. All they say is, no, don't build that school. So I don't know. Unless I don't see this thing being successful unless we can get much better at gaining public support. Because the project can't change substantively. It can't. And you said, like you said, TJ, that the site work is the site work. If it's going to be on this site, it's going to be 17%. That's the way it is. So I just get frustrated because I hear individuals get up there and say no, and they call this the Taj Mahal, and they say it's over designed, and they say we don't need this and we don't need that, but there's no solutions. They say the town dropped the ball on maintenance. The town didn't drop the ball on maintenance. The town 10 years ago specifically decided that the Shell School needed to be replaced. So why spend good money after bad? So we hold off on the things that we can hold off on, and then we'll replace the whole shooting match. That is not neglect. That's planning.
I actually wish, Joe and Sandra, you have something to say. So I wish I was reading the education plan again just last week. And I know that's focusing on course programming mostly, but it also goes into quite a bit of information about enrollment, about the plans for future building and future development of our schools, improvement of our schools and things like that. It answers quite a few of these questions also, but I don't think anybody reads that document. It's like, well, much less anything else that we've produced, but that one in particular, I wish
The
people would
MSBA
read.
does.
Oh, I know they have, and actually they praised it.
As a matter of fact, the educational program for the high school was actually pointed out by 1 or 2 board members at the time as a very good example of a good educational plan. I'm not sure how they responded to the South School, but I imagine if it was modeled after what was done in the high school, it had to be right up there as well.
Jack McCarthy told me that at the Mass Municipal Association. He said that our ed plan for the high school was a model that they use now.
Yeah, they
So,
used
yeah.
to refer other districts to it, say,
Yeah.
do something like this.
Yeah.
So, it's been a very good job. I don't know. I'm just frustrated, I guess.
As are we all.
Yeah.
Sandra, you had more to say,
Yeah,
Sandra.
I wanted to kind of just if we can, because I feel like I apologize for asking the question earlier. I didn't want to derail it, and really just kind of wanted to get back to like the roots of why we were put together years ago as a building committee, and know that we are tasked with kind of, we got to circle back, right? We got to come back. And obviously, there's some frustration with all of us with just stuff in general, but we have to kind of dust things off and move forward. Is there a way this evening? I don't have the agenda in front of me, and I don't know if this is the time, but just to talk about what can we as a building committee, the next steps and what we can do in terms of communications, putting out a survey with the town, potentially, just to hear from everyone in town, right? Not picking who we want to hear from, but everyone, and getting that feedback. And the thing is, right, Joe just kind of nailed it all. Project's not going to change. MSBA told us that, right? This is what it is. There's some slight tweaks here, there,
Right.
etc. But we really can we get out like a larger survey, and then really see what, get a feel, get a pulse, and have the building committee kind of see those results, so that we know what we're working with here, right? It's
Well-
like doing the same thing twice isn't going to help. So let's readjust based on, what the public is saying.
Well, why don't we roll right into that? Because that's the next, actually, Carl, if you want to, that is the next item on the agenda, is public outreach. But Carl, you had your hand up, and I don't want to cut.
Well, yeah, just hearing this and following up on what Sandra and others have said, is this independent committee a fairly good cross-section of the town?
Well,
is there a no voter on there? Is there?
that
No.
was the intention. The town manager did try to appoint no voters, and actually after the first meeting, he went back
Mhm.
and specifically invited more no voters, and I don't think he got much in the way of response. I think he might have a couple people who were at best skeptical, but he did specifically reach out to no voters.
I just wanted to point out then, in terms of the fact that they're asking questions that we already have the answers to in a lot of cases. Can you use that as a start of public outreach for why there's a need to revote this project, even though it's not going to change? It's because voters apparently didn't have all the information of what a no vote what the implications were. And so and these people, by asking these questions, are illustrating that you've got evidence there. And that's a reason for having a revote then, and hopefully getting out more information. So as you want to move on to the next topic of outreach, it seems to be the necessary, agenda for outreach is to supply the information, not how great this new school is or what the design is or any of that, but what the consequences are of the no vote.
You should sit in on these meetings, Carl, because you would say, you would answer a question that you have answered number of times in the last year, but we didn't get the information out. People didn't come to our presentations to hear the information.
Mhm.
The other thing is too, that really bothers me in hindsight, is that we only had 10 minutes at town meeting, which was really our best opportunity to give the merits of the project top to bottom. And in 10 minutes, that's not enough time to do much, but that was only a small slice in time. But for public outreach, unless anybody else has, Melissa, go ahead, and then we'll roll into public outreach.
I just want to echo comments, obviously, that Joe and Sandra have put forth. It's in all the frustrations, similarly to things that I've thought about, things that I'm questioning. But I kind of get the sense, and I guess where I'm concerned with part of the working group, or not even working with, just in general, is how are we, there seems to be a decided mentality already on some of this, and it's not shifting. And that's the piece that I'm not quite sure how we overcome that hurdle. It's been presented at town meeting. It's been presented in a number of forums. There's been mailers that have gone out. I'm trying to understand how it can be projected differently when not much can change in the plan that's being presented. And we're not getting much information on how do we push this forward and make it palatable for someone to change their vote, or maybe that's not the goal. So I'm really struggling with how we move this forward as a group and try to push and change that outcome when there seems to be some pretty obstinate hurdles there by individuals in the community.
So, and I don't disagree with any of that. So that's why this is an adjunct to the MSBA update, was the public outreach portion of this agenda. And it was over the next 7 months, 8 months, however long it is till is. Go ahead, Joe, please.
I think we got to attack the credibility of the handful of no voters that are the most vocal, because they are spewing misinformation, and we somehow have to take an approach that marginalizes them, because I have to believe that the vast majority of the no voters were not as adamant as the handful that were the most vocal. So I think what we got to take is get their rhetoric and somehow turn it back on them.
I agree with that. One brief example. At not this past meeting that I wasn't at, but the one from last week of the working group, gentleman stood up, and I won't name his name, but very thoughtful guy, and has a very professional position. And he's the type of guy who I would look at and typically think that this would be right up his alley to support and approve. He stood up and he made a comment to the working group and said he voted no because he just didn't have enough information. That was almost an exact quote. And, you know, in the back, I don't comment, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking not for lack of us trying to get it out over the last year, but it's for, we didn't get the information in front of him enough in enough forms, apparently, and not for lack of trying, I think, but so, over the next, again, 7 or 8 months, I think that's our job, is to put on a road show, go out into the community. I do have a couple suggested items for us to do that with right off the bat. If I can roll into that, if anybody has any other comments but there is and Joe, I emailed you about this. Actually, I didn't, Lori Jakes did. There is a back to school night where she suggested that we have a person in every school for back to school night with a board, an informational board, and there to answer questions so we can be visible on that. There's also some sort of pumpkin patch thing in October that we can be at. And then, like we did on the high school, Tim and Carl, and we put together a list of community groups that we reached out to, and understanding that, we're beyond your scope of services for this. I think we as a committee can, if we have a compact package to bring into the community, we can meet with the Moms Club, the Portuguese clubs, the Italian, all the ethnic clubs, and the Rotary Club. You name it. We have a list somewhere. Actually, I still have the list that we hit for the high school that we can reach out to and do a presentation, and private presentations too, if people want a small neighborhood presentation. So I think that's the next thing, is that we have a group of people from this building committee as a subcommittee group, as a public outreach team. Everybody can be involved, but that's not really, everyone's bag to go out and do that sort of presentation. So I don't know who would want to and who wouldn't, but I'm
So,
certainly
TJ.
game.
Oh, so, sorry, I think people are raising their hand. I can't figure out how to do that again. So,
Sandra, and then Catherine.
yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to figure, so just two things. Are we, like, if we did a subcommittee, right? Is that something that it could be that does that subcommittee create the communication plan and then makes the materials that are communicated out? Like, what is the makeup of that?
That's why it's on the agenda. I mean, suggest it and we'll put it together. As a building committee, I can tell you we had a canned presentation for the high school. It was about Carl, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. It was like a 20-minute long PowerPoint. And we would do a presentation, answer questions, and we'd be in and out in an hour tops.
Got it.
I always use the example of the one I went to with you, Carl, at the library one Saturday to the Stoughton Women's Club that had exactly one member. And Carl gave the same 20-minute presentation and she raised her hand and he took questions from that one member and the three of us left. But it was successful and I think we have to do the same thing. Catherine, you had your hand up.
Sure. Thank you, TJ. I'd be interested in being on the subcommittee to help develop the plan and think about the ways that the school committee can support this. I know one of the things that the school committee can certainly help in what we do different this time is to have that clear no plan. Show people, the no plan doesn't mean that we're not doing anything. The no plan doesn't mean that nothing changes. The no plan means the South School closes and kids get shipped to other schools. So we have a much clearer plan, but I think members of the school committee might be interested in helping with the roadshow as well. So if that's a possibility, I don't want to volunteer their services without them asking, but I know that some have expressed interest in talking to groups of people that they know, their clubs that they're members of as well.
That'd be great. Melissa, you've been waiting, I think. Unless
No.
that's an old hand raise.
Well, I had put it down, but that's fine.
Okay. Joe Buckley.
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, we've got to also be aware of campaign finance law and trying to influence the outcome of any kind of election. So we got to be careful on what gets said and what positions we take as a building committee. That said, we should also have very specific responses to the no voters that will likely come to any of these forums and express their vague complaints. It's the only way I think we're going to get them to or get the town to face their credibility. It's we can do all the outreach, but as soon as you get that one person up there and says this is the Taj Mahal or this is all wetlands, we have to have very specific answers to that. And I know, Carl, you answered that question at public forums in the past, and just to throw out a public forum like we did in the past, I think is going to be a waste of time. We've got to be very specific and targeted, I think, on the points that we want to make. And also, I think it would be very helpful if we expound upon, and Dr. Baeta, this might be more in your area, expound upon what, in both scenarios, on a yes scenario, what's going to happen with the other schools? Because we are planning on doing things, or you are planning on doing things in those buildings. Rearranging classrooms, adding programs, whatever it is that you're planning on doing, I think that needs to get expressed, because I don't think people felt that, the south part of town was the only one getting benefit out of this. And that's not true. So I think we expound both, what happens to the other buildings if we get the school, and what's going to happen to those other buildings, what could possibly happen to those other buildings if we don't get the school. And you've already, said it in very summary form today, but I think we need to expound on that. And if we can throw some order of magnitude numbers at some of that stuff, that might open some people's eyes. Because
That was one of the big, that's
yeah,
one of
to
the,
me, to me,
Go ahead,
the
Tom,
whole,
I'm sorry.
the big issue here was the cost.
Mm.
You know, then they started picking at, you know, pickleball courts and crap like that. But it was sticker shock. The bottom line is it was sticker shock. So if they understand what the sticker is going to be for the alternative, it may be perceived better.
I was just about to say, Joe, that the questions you pointed out before about the, you know, what you're gonna do in this case, that case, there was a big category of those questions on the working group list that the town manager was asking too. And I do think that there were people asking those questions that we can answer those. That gets a lot of those things out of the way, but
Yeah, I think that's part of the so-called lack of information people felt.
yeah.
Because I don't think people realize how much of the entire town this project will affect, either whether it goes or not.
How about Joe Baeta, Sandra Gropey, and then Melissa Lynch, if your hand is raised
Yes.
again. So Joe Baeta first.
Thank you, guys. I'll make it really, really quick. I see this as a keep something alive now and at the next meeting work to the future. I have on the 17th, a back to school night at OMS. I'm scheduling myself to be there. I have the 18th at Stoughton High School, back to school. I'm scheduling myself to be there. I have 5 elementary schools on the 19th, starting at 6 p.m. The Hanson at 5. I can go to the Hanson for 5 and then go into 1 to 6, but I can't go to 4 others. And so what I'm seeking is for next week, can we all find a way, whoever feels comfortable, a table, some handouts, a sign. I think we still have some of that stuff. And if not, we can probably get it from DRA, from any stuff that we gave back or has already been printed and sitting somewhere. I don't know, I'll defer. But keeping this alive during these back to school nights to me is very important next week. Everything else, we have another meeting in 2 weeks or whatever amount of time. We can set an agenda for a very clear working group, as was suggested earlier, very clear, dynamic public relations and marketing approach that is meeting the needs of campaign finance law and all of that stuff. But the biggest issue I have for next week, and like I said, I've already scheduled myself for 3 nights next week. I'm happy to be there, but if there's others that could help out in any way, shape, or form, I think that would be a positive. Thanks.
So Sandra,
I can volunteer to be at, I'll be at the high school, Dr. Beta, and I don't know if you could want a reprieve from that building, and I could do a table there. I'm happy to do what I can just to get more information out there. We can figure it out if that's the building you need me at. The one thing I just wanted to kind of note is we're talking a lot about hitting the elementary school functions and other school functions, and it's more than that. We have a lot of taxpayers that voted no and they don't have children in the schools. I think we've heard a lot of information of, I don't know what's going on. I don't have social media. I don't, see this information, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to continue to say it. We can, we should be working with, the select board, Steve Cavey, he's a member of this, and the town manager is a member of this as well, to see if we can get a survey that's created from this communication working group, or whatever it is, the working group. We put together a quick survey to ask the community, where they can send out that email to the community to ask them. Because here's the deal, there's just going to be no voters. We're not going to flip them. And they all have their own valid reasons, right? There are some people that they have their reasons, and I respect that. And I mean, we all do, right? But there are some that are just kind of going with the flow because they're being told information that perhaps isn't 100% what it is. So we just need to get this group together, the working group. Obviously, I'd like to be part of that. I've been passionate in bringing it up throughout this whole session. But I do respectfully want to say there are people that voted no. They have their valid reasons. I don't want to minimize that for that reason, but I do think that we have an opportunity to kind of flip some folks to understand better what we're trying to do. But it's not going to be at all the back to school nights and all those things, TJ. I think we need to kind of venture out more to what we didn't do before.
Well, I said that though.
Oh, wait a minute. Are we going back and forth here? Hold on, you know, troublemaker. No.
So,
No,
Well,
yeah, I
well,
just think we need to get that
yeah.
survey out from the building committee. I'm
Well,
100% think it's gonna, I want to hear from the no people. I don't care who they are. We don't need their names. I want to hear from them. Some do have valid reasons why. Maybe some just can't afford it on fixed incomes. And maybe we need to get better information out on if you're on a fixed income, how can you get help?
Melissa, you had your hand up, or?
Yeah, I just, I know we've talked prior about the impact to the other schools and modulars and kind of the what if scenarios that happen. I think we need to also just address what will happen to the middle school, what'll happen. I know we've talked about the middle school then gets pushed out in priority because the South is a priority. The question comes up all the time, why the middle school not before the South? And we've addressed that ad nauseum, but it keeps coming up because it funnels more kids in there. So a clear and succinct question, I guess, answer to that, which we already know, is because how it was prioritized in the master plan and obviously the conditions of the building. However, we also need to think about what stressors this no vote would put on the middle school and the high school. Resource wise, how far out are those, how far out are other projects getting pushed down the road? All of it, really think about it holistically, not just on the elementary level, because once you get some people moving on, they're like, it might not impact my kids. Oh, now I'm moving into kids and if it's not enough for them to just say, paying this forward, public education is important, then we need to also address why it's important as your kids are growing up, that this is still impactful to you and impactful to those coming down the pike. So, and it's not going away. It's just not. So I think that also has to be very clear and outlined succinctly in a way that makes sense.
Diane?
Sorry, TJ, I forgot I had muted myself. I'll be more than glad to help too. I have to ask Katie. Katie's still on board what night the West School is. I feel very comfortable going there. I know I've heard feedback from some of my neighbors because that is my precinct and my district and my kids went to school there. They're just concerned about if that school changes, where are their kids going to go? And how is that going to happen? So even if I can sit with maybe Joe B and say, you know what, right now, and I'm not talking anything out of school, but we're upwards or pretty close to 300 kids now at the South School. So if that gets split out into all the other elementary schools, it's going to push pretty much all of them over the top. And I think that's something that has to be brought out as well. It just isn't, we can close that school and just put the kids elsewhere and everything's going to be fine. I think I said it at quite a few meetings, and I'm going to piggyback sort of on what Sandra said. We need to tell them the alternative, more importantly. In other words, if we don't pass this, how much is it going to cost us, number one, to close the South School if we have to, if it's as bad as a lot of us think it is, and that pushes those 300 kids out to everywhere else. Where do they go? Do we have to get modulars? And how big is your school going to be now? They're close to 3. I want to tell you the Gibbons and the Daw are approaching 4. So we've got a lot of kids to figure out. And I think that's what's making a lot of parents, I guess uncomfortable would be the word, not fearful, but just uncomfortable, the not knowing. The other thing is, and I can certainly volunteer for some of this stuff, I got to tell you, the best place to catch all of these parents is go sit yourself at a Pop Warner game, go down to when basketball's playing. They're all there in the stands and they're a captive audience, very captive audience. I'd be more than glad to help with that as well. Thanks, TJ.
That'd be great. So it's been a pretty robust discussion. Does anybody else have anything to add, Tim? You're
My
muted.
suggestion is, sorry about that. My suggestion is that we do set up a small group of people we talked about this a few months ago when we met, the need to crystallize the message, and people have brought up a lot of good points tonight about what that message would be. And I think, there's like 3 or 4 or 5 major points that we should try to just get our arms around. And I wonder if we shouldn't develop a small group, because otherwise it'll become a 10-point message that actually does that. So I don't, whether that's something we can get out of this meeting, TJ, to present back to the committee about what that message might be. I sent out a few months ago, I was going back in my emails, and I did send out sort of an outline of what that, which is a lot of what people have talked about. They kind of comes under three major buckets: what's happening within the district as a whole that's different now than what people may understand, and how this project is going to help that. I think the fact that, like what Diane just said, that this is not a no-cost solution. No is not a no-cost alternative. No is just a different cost alternative, and what does that actually look like? And I think that we have to get clear around the tax impact in general, because there was unclarity back a while ago, and with some of the rebates and some of the other things that are potentially happening, and some of the changes in the way we're approaching the project, we may be able to be more clear, and that might be a more palatable number than what certainly was initially floated. So I just feel like that we've got to get ourselves around a very simple 3 or 4 point. I mean, they might have multiple parts of it, but 3 or 4 basic points of information. Whether that's a group, a subgroup, which I think would be the best way to do it, probably.
So if we had a working, actually, Jake, why don't you go ahead first?
I was just going to suggest, I'm happy to continue on with tours of the building. So I do think every time we've offered tours and people have attended, I think that is a really impactful opportunity for people to see the building. It has never been the same people that have come through multiple times. So I don't know how to get that out there, and I don't know if it's like certain days of the week at a certain time, it's like a drop-in or something. I don't know. And maybe and I don't even know if the committee wants to do that, but I'm happy to walk people through the building, because I really do think it is impactful just to see. Because I think there's a lot of lip service as like, well, I went to the South 20 years ago and I remember what it looked like. Well, you can come and take a look now. I mean, we keep it in as good condition as we can, but people walk through and you can see the educational impact of the educational plan on this building and why we're looking for different things. So this is my 2 cents. Happy to do that.
Love that idea. So if we had, Sandra, is that a new hand or an old hand? Heidi, how about you, Heidi? That's a new hand.
Yeah. I wasn't here when the committee started, so I don't know if this has been done. But I know in my own town years ago, when Jake's talking about the tour, whether it's a Saturday and it's an open house thing for a couple hours, maybe, or something like that, people are out running around doing errands in this nice weather, going to ball games and soccer games, whatever they might swing through. But beyond that, one of those tours was actually filmed and shown on cable. All the issues. And I was on the school committee at Tri-County, and we did that there as well. Windows that wouldn't shut, snow piling up inside the windowsill, on the windowsill in the library because they wouldn't shut anymore. I think visuals, are very impactful. So
I agree. And to that end, maybe reorganizing the website also. I see, well, I don't want to open it up to everybody, but I see Pat Yanikowski has a assume that's Pat, has a question, so I don't want to
Yes,
ignore.
it is and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. As the time gets closer, I think we have to get people out to vote. There are yes people who thought it would pass easily because of the terrible condition that the South School is in, and they didn't vote. So we have to get those people to the polls, especially concerned parents in other districts besides the South.
Heard a lot of that from people who have been to the working group meetings too, is that they, well, mostly the people who show up, they, and there hasn't been many, but they didn't get information, but they also cite other examples of people who didn't, and I know people who didn't vote.
Mm-hmm.
I know someone prominent in the school department who didn't vote, which
Yep.
who I know very well, and I'll catch him at some point, but no one here, by the way. But so
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you, Pat. So if we had a small working group, understanding, of course, that we can't have a quorum for a working group for public outreach, and the limited time we have to pull something together for the back to school nights. Is anyone available for Friday? Oh, well, let me say this without setting a time, because we'll have to coordinate that. Does anybody have any thoughts on a small working group, public outreach working group that can be expanded, but for present purposes, the back to school nights, that can get together on a Teams meeting on Friday, say for an hour or so to pull something together for a strategy just for back to school nights, to provide information only, because we can't advocate and ask people to vote specifically, but we can give out information on the project. But which
Yeah, I can
isn't
do
just
that. I can be there.
Sandra. Sandra, I'll be there. Joe, I think you're necessary. Can you be there?
I can be there. I'm not sure which Joe you were talking to, but
Joe Buckley, well, I was going to actually suggest you're necessary too, because you know all the MSBA stuff better than any of us. Building committee members particularly, but
it's been a while.
TJ, I have a commitment that day with another situation, but like I've said, I've committed myself on my calendar for the 17th, the 18th, the Hanson at 5 p.m. and then I can do a 6 p.m. at one of the other elementaries. It's just a matter of you guys telling me where you want me to be.
Okay.
Yeah. TJ, I wish I could say, but I also have a commitment for Friday. I don't know, maybe I could stop by and just pick up some, because I've told Katie I would go to the Wilkins, which is my local school here, on that night and talk to some people.
For the purpose of the meeting, I'll connect with you after that with whatever support materials you need for that.
Okay.
Appreciate you being there.
Okay, thank you.
Short notice, Diane, apologize for that, but.
Well, if that's okay, I just wish I didn't have a commitment I couldn't get out of, so.
No worries. Catherine, you had your hand up.
I'm very interested. I may or may not be available that evening, but I'm available until about 5 or so, maybe 6. And I am available to, my students attend the Gibbons, and I can attend at least part of that evening to present or hand out information.
Yeah, TJ, maybe the time needs to be flexible. Like maybe we can get more people.
Well, just for the meeting on Friday, the Zoom meeting on Friday or Teams meeting on Friday, so that we can work out some sort of plan, and we're not just going and standing and talking quietly to ourselves. But can I ask you, Jake, or maybe
I was gonna
Katie.
say TJ,
Yeah.
Jake and I would be more than happy to do whatever we need to do on Friday as well.
Yeah, if it can be the morning, that would probably be better sometime in the morning, but we can both be there and help facilitate any information to the other principals as well for the other schools.
Well, that'd be great. Can I ask you what, stupid question? What happens at a back to school night?
So the families come, meet the classroom teachers, meet the specialists. I mean, we run 2 sessions at the South. I think most of the elementary schools run 2 sessions, like
We
a
run
45-minute
3.
session. Okay.
We
We run
3
2
half hour.
45-minute sessions, and Katie runs 3 30-minute sessions, Katie?
Yeah, 30 minutes. So the teachers all have a presentation they do on repeat. And you know, they come in through the front door. So that's a great place to be, right there where everyone enters. Yeah. It's
So if we had a
it's informational.
We could have a small table. Generally, you're speaking for your own school, but small table off to the side as people walk in.
Yep.
With
Yeah, a couple of
something.
groups have tables as well, so I think it actually makes
Oh, okay,
sense
good.
to be a part of that.
Yeah, like typically our PTO has a table. You know,
CPAC.
we're trying to get people to do Corey forms and fingerprints and whatnot. So it would absolutely make sense.
I think it runs a little different though for the middle school where you have different times that you go to every single one of your child's classes. So I don't know if there wants to be, if maybe there's even an outreach of saying a half hour before people might be there, because it's pretty tight I can't speak for the high school, but as now a middle school mom as well, I'm going from class to class to class and there's a half hour presentation to start. So that timing isn't as, there isn't as much of that open timing, I think, that is available at the elementary, but maybe there's another creative way to engage, because there's a lot of people that are going through there and a lot of good info. It's just a great spot to pick up a lot of ears. And I'm willing to help at a different school than my kids' schools. I just need to know the dates.
Noted. Jeff Pickett, you had your hand up?
Yes, I was just offering to be on the working group.
Oh, yeah,
Or
actually, yeah, you'd be helpful. So I'm compiling a little list here of the and if I could also ask, because I don't want to ignore it. Tim, Carl, Courtney, your thoughts on this, if you have any?
Sorry, I was muted, TJ, but
It's okay.
Certainly we're still happy to participate in, public outreach where we can, and or help with any graphics that we've already produced, just and if they need to be reorganized somehow in that regard. So yeah, I know we can't
Okay.
design 3 more options for you or anything like that, but we can certainly still participate in some community outreach and planning for it.
Yeah, and we would too as well, TJ.
Okay. So I have for Friday availability. Jeff, you didn't say whether you'd be available or not, but you said you would be available for public outreach, but
I could meet on Friday.
okay. Sandra, you'd be available. I'll be available. Joe Buckley, Joe Baeta is not available. Catherine, did you say you'd be available?
I'm available during the day until I say early evening.
Okay.
This Friday.
Mostly trying to make sure that we don't hit a quorum, because then we'd have to have a full meeting. 1,
I'm
2,
not
3,
a voting member, if that helps.
3, 4, 5, 6. That's 6 voting members, so we're good there. And then we can have a broader group of the working group. I think we'll still be good. Diane mentioned the working group, but not available Friday. Joe's not available Friday. So why don't I with the list of people I have, unless anybody else. Melissa, I'm sorry, I don't want to miss anyone, so.
I'd be available, Friday, it would depend on the time, to be
Okay.
honest, but, I believe that I could help at a different school other than my own students. I just need to know the schedule.
Okay,
And if it works with, obviously everything else, but I could make my way to something.
okay. Well, for any scheduling matters, I'll send it out to the committee-wide to everyone. Because I can do that without violating the open meeting law, but for the purposes of a Zoom or other meeting, if we don't hit a quorum, we can have a working group discussion, and I don't think it will take long. As Carl pointed out, we've done all the materials. If it's a matter of repackaging things, maybe more compact handout or something, I don't know what, but and I'll try to, with the help of Tim and Eric, put together some sort of Teams meeting for Friday at a time that works for the handful of people that said they would be available for that date. And we can at least talk about the logistics, the materials and that sort of thing. And then we can talk broader strategy with the public outreach subcommittee group. I'm guessing probably not next week, but maybe the week after we can talk broader strategy. But if that sounds okay with everyone, does anybody have any comments to that? Sandra, I cut you off earlier, and I know you always have strong thoughts, so I don't want to deal with it afterwards if you're, yeah.
No, I didn't. No, I accidentally had my hand raised. I don't know how to. You know how that goes. I had nothing.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add under the agenda item of public outreach, which will be a continuing item? And we'll, of course, we'll have a meeting next month where there'll be another update on that, but we'll probably have a working subcommittee group sometime before then, TBD, if that makes sense. All right. Next up on the agenda, unless anybody has anything else, I don't want to cut this short because this is, of course, our work over the next 7 or 8 months, but there's still a lot of details to hammer out first. So
Is somebody going to send out a Teams invite for this Friday meeting?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll probably be, I'm guessing Eric, but
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
We'll work out the time first in an email, get comments on availability, and for my own part, I know afternoon is no good, but I can do anything up till probably like 2 o'clock or something like that, but I'm flexible also, so
I'm pretty much open all day, so.
retirement does you well.
It does indeed.
All right, item 5 on the agenda, SB School Building Committee changes. Joe Baeta.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the following nominations for consideration by the committee, which would then be published with the town manager and then be published within the MSBA. The first is to add Dennis Rigo as the Director of Facilities for Stoughton Public Schools, replacing Joyce Husseini. At the same time, I'd like to thank Joyce, who I've gotten the opportunity to work with the last year and have known her for a number of years, for her service to the committee and hopefully her availability to take my phone call when needed on this project. So that would be Dennis Rigo. The second request for a nomination is Leo Fay, former member of the High School Building Committee, resident of the town, active prior private business owner in town, and also very much involved with a number of different community groups. And as of just a few minutes ago, I would also like to add and Patricia Yanakowski, Patricia has been a member of the school committee, is a taxpayer in town meeting rep, and has served the community in different roles in the organization, is also a grandparent of children in the district, but brings expertise, both herself, Leo, and Dennis, in different perspectives. So I'm nominating those three to fulfill the committee to be in full.
So Joe, do you want to vote from the committee for that?
I don't need a vote.
Yeah, I know you don't need
but-
one, but if you wanted one.
Yeah, I think it's important that I'm supported as we move this up, because it's actually fulfilling the 2 open seats on the committee, and then the change. And Leo comes from significant experience with the last high school project, plus being a private business owner in town for a number of years and works in industry. And then Patricia, Pat, as we know her, who comes from being serving on the school committee in Stoughton and being an active town meeting member and citizen within the community, who can really speak to, I think, some of the issues around some of the folks who are just concerned about cost and price and so on and so forth, that I think she can help to address as well.
I'd like to make the motion for the building committee to support Dr. Baeda's appointments or recommendations for appointments for Dennis Rigo, replacing Joyce Husseini, Leo Fay, and Pat Yanakowski.
I'll second that.
That's great. That puts us at a nice even 15. We've been working at 14 for ages. So, does anybody have any other comments or questions on that?
TJ, do we need to take a vote on that?
Sure. We don't. Joe asked for a vote for a show of support, and certainly willing for my part to give him that. I like all of those people. Actually, I haven't met Dennis yet, and I wanted to recognize Dennis for sitting in this meeting and welcome him to the committee. Heidi, you had something to.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I had my hand up very late when we were on the last topic, so I hope
Sure.
it's okay to still
No,
bring up
please go ahead.
something. I was wondering if, Vertex or DRA, on the promotional material or informational material that might be given out in the public outreach, showing pictures of some of the areas that are of, more serious concern, let's put it that way, in the building. And then beside them, the mock-ups of what that same area will look like in the new build. Seeing deteriorated spaces and then right beside it, what it will look like, I think, can really bring home to people what the building, the atmosphere, the surroundings for kids, for their education. It's just very hard for people to visualize. If they haven't been in the building, they don't know what it looks like. If they haven't watched all the meetings, they haven't seen all the mock-ups. So for everybody in it, whether it's a pamphlet, posters, whatever it is, that's really, I think, how people are going to see where their tax dollars are going and what the impacts would be. So it's just a thought.
Yep, we certainly do have some pictures of existing conditions that we can revive and republish in materials. And also, I like the idea of a video of some sort. I think that was your comment earlier.
We could
Joe
probably use some of DRA's graphics that they've had for mock-up spaces.
Actually, early presentations did touch on just that with the old versus the new. We stopped using the old images at the point when a lot of new images were being generated just because of the length of the presentations and the importance of the message. But there's both videos and photos galore, and Dennis knows where he can find them in my directory.
I think we have people's attention now. So reviving some of those things might be a good opportunity to catch people who just didn't show up when we had these forums a year ago.
That, I hope we have their attention, because that was the single biggest problem.
Yeah.
Nobody showed up to the scads of public forums that we had.
Yeah.
It's not unique to Stoughton. It's happening with the Berkeley project as well.
Right. Oh, actually, I could call for a vote on Joe's recommended members of Dennis Rigo, Pat Yanikoski, and Leo Fay. There was a motion that was made and seconded. So running through the roll, Joe Buckley,
Aye.
Steve Cavey, not here, Diane Dolan,
Aye.
Jake Dorr, Sandra Gropey,
Aye.
Joyce Husseini,
Aye.
Katie Monahan,
Aye.
Catherine Weiss,
Aye.
Dr. Baeta,
Aye.
TJ Recupero votes aye, Melissa Lynch,
Aye.
and Heidi Perkins.
Aye.
Great.
Sorry, TJ, I was here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jake. Jake, you vote aye?
Indeed, aye.
Fantastic. If
Mr.
there's
Chairman,
nothing-
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Beat me to it. If there's nothing further, motion made by Dr. Baeta, seconded by Joe Buckley. Running through the roll again, Joe Buckley,
Aye.
Diane Dolan,
Aye.
Jake Dorr,
Aye.
Sandra Gropey,
Aye.
Joyce Husseini, and Joyce, this will be your last meeting, I assume.
It will. I mean, I'm happy to pop in when I can and stay informed, but I really appreciate having had the ability to be with this project from its inception, from the first statement of interest that was filed up through this point. And I really need to see it happen.
With our great thanks, please don't be a stranger.
Thank you.
Katie Monahan,
Aye.
Catherine Weiss,
Aye.
Dr. Baeta,
Aye.
TJ Recupero votes aye, Melissa Lynch,
Aye.
and Heidi Perkins.
Aye.
And that's it. I did actually have one other agenda item too, but I'll put it on the next one. I wanted to get the thoughts on the committee of reorganizing. If someone else wanted not that I'm stepping down, but if someone else wanted to be chair and lead us, I'd certainly welcome the opportunity to hear anyone's thoughts, because
Not on your
Fred-
life.
fresh voice can always be good, but that'll be on next agenda regardless of what
Thanks,
Joe
Joe
Buckley
Buckley. I
says.
think I'll pass as well.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all for coming. We are
Thanks.
adjourned.
Good to see everyone again.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Tim. Thank you,
Thanks.
Aaron.